to finish his opening remark about my mother, Marjorie Alice Cooley Judge, at the Pentagon for 30 years, 5 levels above top security, highest paid woman, GS-13 when she left, access to the war room for briefings. These projections she did of the draft call were not contingency plans. They had to be right 5 years in advance, within 100 people either way, for exactly how many people they would draft. And they were based on actuarial tables about retirement and enlistment, discharge categories, and then attrition and loss, if there was going to be a war, were planned in by the Operations Division of the Joint Chiefs, headed up by an interesting individual named Fritz Gustav Anton Kramer, who was called the Iron Mentor to Al Haig and Henry Kissinger, himself trained at the Kriegs Academy and may possibly be part of the Malmedy Massacre. But to let the other shoe drop, I asked my mother after she retired, when did they tell you they would escalate in Vietnam, because she then had to be among the first to know. And she said late November. And I said the last week in November, because something happens on Friday the 22nd. And she said the Monday following the Kennedy assassination. I said, was this just a few more advisors? She said, I couldn't believe the figures. I took them back up to the Joint Chiefs and I said, these can't be right. And I used to tease her that that was the first civilian protest of the war in Vietnam. And she'd never gone to the Joint Chiefs or questioned anything before, and they told her, no, those are the figures and you're going to use them from this Office of Planning. They told her to project a war in Vietnam that would last 10 years with 57,000 American dead, exactly on target. So that's the other side of that coin. She's told in April of '63 for the first time to change figures and get out of Vietnam, and then it's completely reversed, just as Kennedy's buried. Are we close to set? Okay. Our next speaker is going to be Robert Groden, who many of you know, who I affectionately call the Dalai Lama. Who's been pushing our issue up in the spot where it counts the most for many years, and he wants to talk a little bit about his coming work, Absolute Proof, on the JFK Absolute Proof, but also he wants to tell you about an interesting law case, Robert Groden versus the city of Dallas, that's been developing over some time. He's the author of JFK, The Case for Conspiracy, High Treason, The Killing of a President, The Search for Lee Harvey Oswald, and then the coming book, JFK Absolute Proof, and parts of government by gunplay. He also researched photographic and medical evidence to the JFK assassination for 46 years. And he releases Zapruder film and many other films, and the vast majority of the photographic evidence to the public through the years, including the color autopsy photographs. He worked as a photographic expert and consultant, House Select Committee on Assassinations, and he was really responsible for the major shift in public consciousness by getting onto the Geraldo Rivera show in the 70s and showing the full color, and detailed original copy of the Zapruder film to the American public who had never seen it, and it had been hidden from them for a long time. I was at the 10th anniversary conference in Washington, D.C. when Bob came and showed the rotoscope copy. Rotoscoping is a technique where you take a portion of a frame and blow it up to a full frame and then run the same film, but you're looking at a detail. And the detail he focused on was John Kennedy and his head. And we're sitting there. All we've seen by that point are grainy old third-generation copies of bootleg Zapruders from Garrison's trial and Penn Jones's reprints. And all of a sudden we've got it the way you see it today in full color, but also blown up with Kennedy's head. And, you see the impact of the shot and everything. And I mean, and these were researchers sitting in the audience. We were just absolutely stunned. But that changed the consciousness of a lot of the American public about the case. And Bob's kept at it and tried to get at the truth, and I guess he's going to show you a little slideshow. I think we're almost up.
Okay, there we go.
All right, Bob Groden.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, I'll move over. My remote control is missing, so I'm going to have to go back and forth to advance this manually on the computer. I'm sorry to say, I didn't even know it was gone. Very simply, I'm going to talk about two things. Number one is the upcoming legal situation, and we'll get on something that's perhaps a bit more interesting to most of you. But as you may already know, back in July, I was arrested for selling one magazine in Dealey Plaza, and it was set up. I'm very, very sure it was set up because the young lady who bought it is someone we hadn't even spoken to, so it's quite interesting. I'd like to, if I may, introduce my attorney. This is Alex Tandy. He's representing me in this. Bless your heart. And hopefully the city will stop harassing people that are trying to find the truth and stop backing the sixth floor museum. Right now where we stand is on the municipal side of the case. As of last week, the judge is weighing the value and legitimacy of the concept of dropping the case, throwing the city's case out. And then the next case will be my countersuit against the city of Dallas for First, Fourth, Fifth, and 14th Amendment violations and false arrest. So we'll see where that goes. Anyway, is it possible we might be able to turn the lights down a bit? I need, as I did last year, to request that this not be videotaped.
There's lights at the back.
Because of the uniqueness of the stuff.
There's the lights for this are at the back,
Mike. All right.
behind the door.
Switch is behind you, Mike.
Bit of an advanced look at some of the new stuff that's there. For those of you who are familiar with these three people, you know that this is Emmett Hudson, the groundskeeper of Dealey Plaza. We have now learned, finally, after 46 years, because I knew it a year ago, the identity of the other two, the identities of the other two, and that will all be in the new book. That's one of the more minor things, but this is a working cover. This is maybe not what it's going to look like. This is actually, of course, not a genuine photograph from Dealey Plaza at the time of the assassination. This is from the making of the movie JFK. I shot this while Oliver was shooting. Well, the reason why I chose to use this is because it shows the exit wound in the rear of the president's head, but even more important, it shows the result of gunfire in the plaza. People who saw a lot of gun smoke, we get challenged in the plaza all the time saying that modern smokeless powder doesn't make smoke. Yes, it does. This is just 19 years ago, so this is pretty modern. But it does make a tremendous amount of smoke. And for those of you who remember the old CBS specials from 1964, you remember that their test firings all showed more smoke than this. And they were using a Carcano. So I'm going to get closer.
Okay.
This is a frame of the Bronson film taken at the exact moment of the fatal headshot. You can see part of the explosion here. There will be a lot of new photographs in the new book, over 1,000, most of which have never been published before, and you're going to see some of those here for the first time. These are photographs of Lee Harvey.
You tell me he'd be happy to push that button for you soon.
Could you do that for me?
Sure, absolutely.
I appreciate it.
This middle down button.
Yeah, please. Thank you so much. Okay. This is Lee Harvey Oswald's last moments of life. This was taken at Parkland Hospital after Lee had been shot and before he was killed. You having trouble hearing back there? No? Okay. Okay.
Where's Lee?
Lee's lying on the table here. Next, please.
Hey, Bob, was that a scene from alien autopsies?
No, it's not. Okay. There's Dr. Robert McClelland, and there's some of the others. Lee's on the table here, and they're attempting to save his life. Next. Thank you. Here, his chest has been sliced open, and they're about to take his heart out and massage it. It's quite gruesome, but I have 85 pictures. These have never been seen before, and the pictures themselves weren't even developed until last year. Next, please. There's Lee, lying on the table. This particular photograph was taken about maybe 30 to 45 seconds after he died, but you can see that it's definitely him. Next, please. Okay, there's going to be a couple of photographs that I have colorized. I've created a new system of colorization, and I've taken the entire set of Altgen's photographs, and I've colorized almost all of them to give us a better view of the pictures. The original black and whites will be published as well, but this is something that's kind of interesting, I thought. It gives us a new perspective. Next, please. The missing frames of the Zapruder film, the ones that were cut out by Life magazine, I have published them in the current issue of my magazine. They are there, but they will be larger and obviously a bit clearer, as you can see. There were a total of 10 missing or damaged photographs, and they will all be in the new book. Next, please. Thank you. There's another one. This is frame 210, the frame of the where the fatal shot, the so-called single bullet was supposed to have been fired. Of course, we have a different word for it. It's not the single bullet theory anymore. It's the single bullshit theory. But hey, next, please. Okay, one of the things that I've discovered, there was a witness named Gene Newman, no relationship to the other Newmans that were in the plaza, but Gene told me about having seen a bullet strike the street and told me where it struck. So what I did is I did a micro study of the Zapruder film in that particular area at that time, and lo and behold, it was photographed. This is an additional shot that people did not know had been fired. She testified to the Warren Commission about it, but they, of course, ignored her. This is frame 142. Can you see? Okay, this is frame 142 of the Zapruder film. There's Philip Willis standing there, about to take his picture. And the street is fine. There's no damage at all. 1/18 of a second later, at frame 143, the bullet strikes the street. And we see that flash as the bits of cement fly up in the air a little bit. This is what Jean said, and she said that the residue flew toward the rear, which means, of course, that that shot came from the front. Immediately after that, at 144, the residue has started to settle, but it is still there, and it remains there until Zapruder pans away from it. But there was an extra shot. This is the first one and the one that President Kennedy responded to at that point. He heard the shot, and he stops waving, and he turns and he looks toward the grassy knoll. Next, please. Thank you. There it is. That's the bullet actually striking the pavement in the street right in front of Philip Willis. Next, please. Next, please. Now, you know, for years we've been talking about the possibility of a second headshot. Dr. Cyril Wecht was a major proponent of this idea, and I have been as well, as have a lot of other people. The question is, if there was a second headshot, when did it happen, and is there visual proof of it? Well, the answer in each case is yes. And Dr. Don Thomas's work on the acoustics evidence is what gave me the clue where to look and when. Now, we may be divided on the legitimacy of the acoustics evidence. I personally, absolutely, completely back it. I know it to be true. I was one of the 4 people who worked on it for the House Assassinations Committee, and I know the amount of effort that went into it. And I'm the one who synchronized the audio tape to the actual Zapruder film. Next, please. This, of course, is H.B. McLean, the police officer who recorded the shots. And this is the actual dictabelt that the sounds of the shots were recorded on. Next, please. Thank you. Now, the House Assassinations Committee, and I include myself with it, especially for this type of work, we went down to Dealey Plaza and we actually did test firings. Now, if you're familiar with a House Committee report, you may know that I wrote a report to Professor Blakey before the testing was done in the plaza and suggested that testing be done in all 21 suspected firing points, if only to get them out of the way as possibilities. He absolutely refused to listen to me. He never acted on it. But they did fire from 2 places, from the 6th floor window of the depository, the so-called sniper's nest, please, thank you, and from the stockade fence. Those were the only 2 places that were tested. Even so, ignoring all of the other shot impulses, and there were quite a few more, we were still left with 5 legitimate, provable shots. Because, well, next please. 3 of the shots came from the front, from the grassy knoll, and the other 12 potential shots all came from behind. The actual readout was assigned Texas School Book Depository, although there is absolutely no evidence that all those shots came from the depository window. Next, please. This is Mark Weiss and Ernest Ashkenazi, 2 of the 3 scientists that worked on the acoustics evidence. Next, please. And Dr. James Barger, the 3rd of the acoustic scientists. I got to work with them at the Library of Congress film editing and recording room. And it's a bit of a long story to explain how we did this, so I'll just ignore it for the moment. But this is what we came up with. Next, please. That these are the 5 shots that the House Committee found. Because these are fired so close together, they arbitrarily eliminated this one. No particular reason, except for the fact that the rifle couldn't fire that fast. It couldn't fire fast enough to get these off or these off either. But the House Committee showed through the scientific testing through the echo patterns that this shot came from the front, came from the grassy knoll, and that the others all came from behind. If you've got 3 shots fired here within 3 seconds, then you know that that can't be possible from that particular weapon. So they arbitrarily eliminated this, even though the coefficient on this one, the audio sounds and the degree of certainty was greater for this one than for this one. So they arbitrarily got rid of the one in the middle. Next, please. It was determined that the shot from the front was fired from about this position, 8 feet down from the corner of the stockade fence in the plaza, and that this was fired 0.7 seconds after the fatal headshot. I'm sorry, after the. Well, let's go ahead. I'll explain this to you. I'm going to show that slide again. Okay. This is the echo patterns of just one of the shots. You've got the muzzle blast, you've got the ultrasonic shockwave, you've got everything. This is the acoustics fingerprint of just one of the shots. All of those 15 that I showed you a moment ago have this pattern. And it is entirely possible that all 15 were shots. But since Professor Blakey refused to allow testing on the other potential firing points, all we were left with was echo patterns that matched for 5 shots. Next, please. There's Professor Blakey. Enough of him. Next, please. Flaky Blakey. Okay, this is Dr. Don Thomas. He spoke yesterday, did he not?
Yes.
Yes. Is he still here?
Don't see him today, but I didn't,
Okay. Well, Don did some incredibly important work. You know, I agree with everything he has done, except that unfortunately he's now backing the single bullet theory, which I can't understand. But everything else that he's done has been phenomenal. His determination and timing of the shots, getting them exactly right, explains something that is extremely important. Next, please. And what that importance is this. Professor Blakey, as I'm sure you're all aware, states and has stated since we did this work originally that this shot from the front missed and that this shot struck the president in the head and killed him. We all disagreed with that. All the scientists, myself, most, if not all, of the actual committee members, the Congress people, all agreed that this is the shot that struck. But we couldn't prove it because Blakey stopped the testing. He wouldn't let it go any further. Next, please. So because of Dr. Thomas's work, I did another micro study of the Zapruder film. The timing between those last 2 shots is 0.7 seconds. Next, please. Next is frame 313, which of course is the fatal headshot that struck the president. The question is, did this come from the front or the rear? And which of those last 2 shots really struck him in the head? Well, if we start the clock ticking at this point, we can just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if we can stop at 326, it'll be fine. Or 325, please. So the president is struck and he's thrown to the rear and to the left. Next, 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 next. Okay. This is the president 1/18 of a second before the second headshot. Notice the front of his head at this point here. He has been hit quite clearly to me and to most others from the front. Which of the 2 shots struck him in the head? The one from the grassy knoll, because the one that follows at 0.7 seconds strikes him 1/18 of a second after this. Again, try in your mind's eye just to see this. And now next frame. We now have a new dimension, an exit wound in the right front of the president's head at this point. This is the second headshot. For all these years, we have been looking for something as dramatic as the explosion at 313. It's not there. And the reason why it's not there is there's no matter left. The amount of damage to the president's head was so great at frame 313 that all we've got left here is a hollow hole with 1/3 of the brain blown away. This particular bullet came from behind, apparently entered the exit wound in the rear of his head, and exited right here. Next, please. In the very next frame, we start to see the blood and brain matter being forced forward out of the president's head. Next. You see? It starts to pour down. Now, it's coming out so heavily now that you can't even see the bottom of Mrs. Kennedy's collar, the black collar. Next, please. Next. Next. And next. Next. Okay. Now, going back, this is what's left in the back of the head. This is now the exit wound for the second headshot. Next. And next. Okay, one more. The 335 is one of the 2 clearest frames showing the damage to the president's head. The whole top here to the rear has all been sheared off, just blown away. The exit wound here, this volcano shape in the back of the head, is the original exit wound for the first of the 2 headshots. This is damage caused by the entry wound to the first shot and the exit wound to the second combined together. Next, please. Next. And next. Okay, here it is in motion. I'm just going to play again and again and again, but just watch. And just watch. See, first you have her collar, you see all of it, and then you see the brain, the exit wound from the second headshot as it just pours out and obliterates that view. There were 2 second headshots. I'm sorry, there was a second headshot, and it was the shot from the knoll that struck the president in the head, and that's what killed him. Next, please. Okay, now this is go forward and backwards, so you can get a better feeling for it. That's where this is the result of the second headshot. I showed this in Pittsburgh last October. This is only the second time I've ever shown this to anybody. So for those of you who took the time to come, I hope that you find this worthwhile. This is the newest and possibly one of the most important new bits of evidence in the Kennedy case. And I guess that's it. Thank you.
Take a few questions.
Yeah. I will take questions. I started late because I started late. But yeah, I'll answer some questions. Just Michael.
The shot from the rear, where do you think, there's no damage to the front of his face?
Yeah, no, it didn't exit at the front of his face. It exited at the front of this damage here, where that piece of bone fragment came out. And you know, in the autopsy photographs, I'm sure you're familiar with them, this piece comes downward like this, and it's lying there like that until Mrs. Kennedy closed it. But in the plaza, in the car, you can see that it's lying there. And I believe that, although it's difficult to really tell, it's almost a mosaic here, it appears that the front of that damage is where the bullet exited.
Well, where did it enter? But didn't it enter on that side?
It entered in the back, the second one. The first headshot was from the front, the second was from the rear, 0.7 seconds later.
But the shot from the rear, which side of the head did it enter on? If it entered on the right side, how could it exit on the right side?
My feeling about this, and this is guesswork, because we don't know, we'll probably never know, is that that little piece of brain matter coming out just above the hairline, that little hole in the back of the head below the massive one, that's the one where I think the bullet went in. That's guesswork. It could have gone in anywhere through the original exit wound too. We just really don't know.
Where did it come from?
They came from behind somewhere. Because we don't have a way of tracking it, it's anybody's guesswork. It could have come from the roof of the records building. It could have come from the second floor of the Dow Tex building, although I doubt that because the Secret Service's agents by that time would be blocking the view to the president. This may have come from the so-called Oswald window, the sniper's nest. That's guesswork, though. We don't know. Yeah.
What about the first 3 shots? How many of those hit strike?
Well, it's kind of difficult to say because I think it was more than just an original 3. I think that Blakey stopped the additional testing in time to prevent us from knowing how many shots there actually really were. The first shot, as I see it, missed completely. That's the one that hit the street that I showed you before. That was quite a find. Jean Newman we have to thank for that because she's the one who told me where to look because she was standing right there and saw it. The second one, I think, hit the president in the throat. The third one, and that one exited his back. Then another one hit his back just below the other one, went in about 1.5 to 2 inches, got caught in the intercostal muscles between the ribs and pushed him downward and forward. That's the one I think was removed during the autopsy. Then we've got Governor Connolly being hit 3 times, the right shoulder, the right wrist, the left thigh. We've got possibly 5 or 6 shots that missed completely, hitting the chrome over the windshield, the one that hit James Tague on the cheek, and so on and so on. And then we've got the 2 fatal headshots, one right after the other.
It always seemed obvious to me that they didn't want to have to shoot him from the front, that the 3 or more shots from the back were supposed to have killed him. It's amazing that they missed so many times.
Well, yeah, that's true. When you're talking about something like this, anything that did not strike the president in the head is technically a miss, unless you wanted to hit Governor Connolly. And there's a story about that too. But if you did want to hit Governor Connolly, to link Oswald to this, since Oswald had no complaint at all against the president, but he did have a technical one against Governor Connolly from when he was Secretary of the Navy. It goes on and on. It was really an unprofessional job with that many misses, but they had one chance, and I think they were probably taking anyone who was interested in getting involved in it and doing it. There is a technical potential answer to your question, and that question is, I don't think that the shots from the front were supposed to have been fired that early. I think those were insurance shots. But the people who were in the front, and I think there were two of them, certainly at least one, but possibly two, wanted to be so involved in this that they just went and fired anyway. Yes?
Now, and I don't get your opinion. You know, when David Lifton was analyzing the evidence, he took it to some professor, I forget who, and they looked at the sequence. They looked at Kennedy's head movements, and first he goes a little bit forward like this, and then he goes back like that. And would you say that had something to do with acceleration? That was hypothesized yesterday, or I mean, there was. I think in the early thinking, it used to be that he was hit, not hit from behind and then hit backwards in the head. But
Well, if you know me, you know that I think David Lifton is a Looney Tune. But and it wasn't him who did that original work. It was Josiah Thompson, and he did it back for 6 seconds in Dallas back in 1966. But you bring up a very good point. If somebody brought up the idea that the president went backwards because of acceleration,
no, forward because of or something. Because no, I would never suggest that he went backward.
Okay.
In the film,
my question to that would be if the car slowed down enough to counteract the shot from the front and make the president go forward because of that, why didn't anybody else in the car go that way?
Well, I'm asking you. But the filming, the analysis of the film, he moves a little bit forward.
That's true.
And then a little bit, and then way backward. I mean, I have no idea. I'm asking. This stuff is just way above me. I'm trying to get,
Well, it's very, very difficult to come up with definite, complete, and unchallengeable answers for everything here. The president not only goes forward in the Zapruder film, he goes forward in the Nix film as well. I don't have an answer as to why, but I do know that there is a law of physics called transfer of momentum, and that's what we're seeing here. I mean, the other side has really grasped at straws, everything from a neuromuscular reaction, decerebrate rigidity, Thorburns reaction, everything under the sun to try to deal with this. And they can't. It just doesn't work.
But we'll never know.
We may never know. Maybe we will someday. Yes, Robert.
Robert, sorry to be tedious here. Could you walk us through the Zapruder frame numbers on the shots you've been talking about? For example, that first miss you said was Zapruder what?
The first was frame 142.
Could you walk us through using of the obvious shots? Could you walk us through the Zapruder frame number? It would help us out.
I would really need to go to another section of this, and it would take way too much time. But for the first shot at 142 missed. One around 157 or so is when it hit him in the throat. Then there's the back shot just before he goes behind. I'm sorry, the throat shot is before he goes behind the road sign. The non-fatal shot to the back hit him right after he clears the road sign.
What number is that? We'll try it later.
I really, we can talk about it in the plaza later on. I'll go through that with you. Yeah.
Can you talk about the lady that was talking with Lee Oswald when they heard the shots ring out?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I was holding for the new book, but I've started talking about that now. There was a woman working in the depository on the second floor. Her name was Geraldine Reed. Mrs. Reed was the one who was chosen to be left behind when everybody went down in the street to watch the president. About 1 minute before the fatal shots were fired, Lee Oswald walked into her room, gave her a dollar bill, and asked for change for the dollar for the Coke machine. Now, we know that Officer Baker saw Oswald with the coat just 72 seconds after the shooting on the second floor. We always assumed that Lee had the change. He didn't. He asked Mrs. Reed for the change for the dollar and said, "No pennies, please, just nickels, dimes, and quarters." And she's counting the change out to him as the shots go off. He had an airtight alibi. Mrs. Reed testified to the Warren Commission about this. They told her to keep her mouth shut, and they pretended she didn't exist. One of the strange ironies of all this is there actually were two Mrs. Reeds that worked in that office. One is Dolores Reed, the other was Geraldine Reed. Dolores went downstairs and was standing in the doorway to the depository on the first floor. Geraldine had stayed behind. She's the one who saw Lee. When they refer to testimony in the Warren Commission report, they talk about Mrs. R.A. Reed, Mrs. Robert A. Reed. They never, ever use her first name. And what happened is they confused the issue because nobody really knew that there were two Mrs. Reeds. That's how they got away with it. I see two last questions. Let me answer those, and then we'll have to go because I'm getting kicked off.
So when you're setting up a patsy from behind, you don't want shots from the front.
Yeah, unless you have to.
Right, so the umbrella man, do you think, was signaling to the spotter who's standing next to the shooter, go ahead and open up because he's still alive?
It's entirely possible. You know, for years I've said that it's my position that the umbrella man was a visual signal to everybody. I think that the guy in the front was just manic enough to want to have been part of this historical event and just fired. He wasn't supposed to, but he did. Once it happened, then they had to start covering stuff up. If all the shots had come from behind, it would have been a lot easier for them. Yes?
To go to a doctor in the autopsy, I hadn't heard about Carico, which I understand that's a name here, and I have a friend who was a friend of his in Dallas at the time, and he told me that he told him that he was told by this was with Kennedy though, with the CIA cut off the blood supply, he wasn't supposed to arrive alive at Parkland. But what I'm really trying in is Rubenstein, are there any autopsy photos of him? Because, you know, the Dorothy Kilgallen book, and I find that is equally as hard to discover as the Crowley name of the CIA. So I guess I'm asking Rubenstein and Carico, do you know about Dr. Carico?
Yeah, Charles Carico, yeah. He's from the very beginning, he has always said that the shot came from the front.
Right.
Always. He appears in a TV special from KRON TV in San Francisco, which was just done back just about the same time as the men who killed Kennedy. And he appears in that one, and he clearly says the shot came from the front. He says there was no damage to the front of the head; that all the damage was back here. And he, as well as all the others, and by the way, I've got him in my DVD as well. The only one of the doctors who I interviewed that would not let me videotape him was Dr. Perry, who just passed away last year. And it's a shame because he said what he said was as strong as anything that any of the doctors said. He said that bullets definitely came from the front. So, folks, I thank you so much. Please come to Dealey Plaza later on if you get a chance. I'll be on the know, and thank you for your attention. I'm glad to be able to share this with you. And thank you, guys.
Bob Groden has spoken at every COPA conference here since 1994 and was on the early board of COPA and has always new things to say.